It's a lecture on the history of skywriting by me. I am the sky. And here follows a brief history of my life as a writer. Preface. At first I wrote only for myself, nothing else existed. In the uncounted millennia before the Big Bang, when I was a riot of atmospheres and inexplicable non-gravitational intensities, before the creation of galaxies or cherry trees or rational thought, before the creation of creation, I kept a few notes. I can't call it a diary because day as such did not yet exist, but it had the same solipsistic purpose, to prevent the moments of my own life from being allowed to waste away like a tap left running, as Virginia Woolf put it on page 239 of Volume 1 of her somewhat later contribution to the same genre. Of course, taps as such did not yet exist either, but I'm trying to give an impression of a tendency to self-reproach that I shared with Mrs. Woolf from the beginning. We writers feel the burden of being a subject in process, no matter who we are. Footnote 1. Linear time, a human and mortal invention, makes no sense to me, it goes without saying, insofar as I have always existed and likely will. But I recognize that humans find a temporal framework helpful in grasping larger ideas, so let's pretend that the eras of my development as a writer succeeded one another as days of the week, on a sort of biblical model, with the modification that on the seventh day, rather than resting, I came here. Monday. On Monday, I had innumerable girlfriends and a few boyfriends and wrote up lists of these with capsule biographies and ratings on a scale of 1 to 10. Also a fair number of sonnets. The universe was expanding, redshift by redshift. Most of my paramours were chunks of frozen rock, miniature suns, minor moons, dwarf planets. I struggled with a few passionate asteroids, but in general avoided asteroids as being too small to get hold of. I was a super hot, super dense young sky, and I liked a good bit of rebound, especially against the cosmic microwave background of that first day of my, so to speak, autobiographical week. It was a rubbery time, nothing nailed down, emotions oscillating like crazy. Every desire broke me open in a dawn of Tiepolo pink. And yet I have to say I was never more physically fit. Due to the level of G-force pressure experienced during cosmogonic workouts, I could chart hourly improvements in bone density, lymphatic drainage, and overall mood. Sex was my angel of reality on Monday, better than bowling or daily aspirin. I did not worry about being exhausted by Tuesday. But then, late Monday night, a certain Alcmene broke my heart, and I had to pause. Alcmene was a nymph of Argos with light brown hair. She was unusually tall. I'm speaking metaphorically. There were, of course, no nymphs or light brown hair or tall or short at the time. There was hydrogen, there was helium, there were nuclei interreacting in an atmosphere of persistent radio noise at a temperature slightly above absolute zero. But a nymph makes a good story, and given the pace of activity on Monday, I had to fall back on narrative cliché. So, during that era of my unbridled panspermia and serial fireball fusions, I was coupling with nymphs and engendering heavy elements all over the universe. I kept a list, as I said, and Alcmene was number 1408. I saw no reason why my 1408th nuclear interreaction should be any different than the previous 1407, but there you go, the heart has its reasons, which reason knoweth not, as someone once said. It was Pascal. I liked Alcmene much too much. Alcmene liked me not at all. Technically, she was already married, had stopped expanding her galaxies, but I was undaunted. She told me she found me an inelegant solution to a non-essential problem. And in fact, the night I had my way with her, she went immediately down the hall and slept with her husband. The result of this three-angled sex act was Heracles, a creature in whom matter decoupled from light. Born with a twofold nature, half mortal, half immortal, not a single incandescent clarity existing everywhere at once like me, Heracles was a thing of ordinary substance, a thing with specific life and limits in space and time. In other words, he had to die. Christopher Hitchens once said to me that having a child is like your own heart walking around in another body. So there went my own heart walking towards its own death, every millennium, every hour closer. I could not bear this. I decided to make a deal with the laws of physics, or maybe it was the laws of metaphysics. I get them confused. Anyway, we all agreed that if Heracles were to set himself on fire and burn to death, his finite human nature could be purged away in the flames and leave the infinite part, the part like me. I thought this a clever solution. Unfortunately, I overlooked the essence of death as an event. It happens in time. For a mortal creature, death is instantaneous. You're alive 1 minute, you're dead the next. But for a creature who exists, like myself, outside time, death has no instant. I have no instant. I am at all times. I have to watch my most beloved child burn to death at all times. And I always will. Monday is the day I learned not to make deals with the man. Tuesday, I became clouds. Possibly a defensive measure. Everyone loves clouds. They lift the heart, they lift the eye. Actually, they lift the heart because they lift the eye. Cognitive scientists say that people place gods in the high blue sky because looking up brings a rush of dopamine to the brain. Yet clouds do more than draw your eye upwards. They invent your imagination. This happens on a small scale when you lie on your back on a hill on a summer day gazing up and say, "Oh, look, there's a camel. That's Werner Herzog, a can opener, the Taj Mahal." The interpretation and reinterpretation of shifting shapes of cloud is one of the most basic exercises in free imagining known to you dwellers on the earth. Also useful for reminding you that most of the ideas you conceive about the world are fragmentary, fugitive, self-ruining, and soon forgotten. However, when I talk within the framework of my autobiography as a writer about inventing the imagination, I mean something else. For a while, during the so-called Enlightenment era, when human beings in general, especially highbrow middle-class Europeans, were so gripped by rationalism and so besotted with notions of intellectual control that natural science lectures offered on topics from hydraulics, magnetics, and mathematics to volcanoes and the operations of the human heart were attended by hundreds of people. During that, as I say, tender-minded era, I made myself available to analysis. I gave them to believe that I, the clouds, could be reduced to a typology. It was hard work. I had to replace the shapeless caprice of my atmospheres with 4 basic cloud types. I had to edit the indecipherably fluid filigree of my language into a dry-as-dust classificatory system replete with Latin terminology. And beyond that, I had to be flirtatious. If you bring a concept or category up close enough to the human mind to be very, very attractive, and then whisk it away so it stays out of reach, it becomes erotic. Flirting is not in my nature, but who would be bothered doing science if it weren't erotic? The 4 basic cloud types as defined by amateur nephologist Mr. Luke Howard in a lecture at Plough Court, London on 10th December 1802, are cirrus, cumulus, stratus, and nimbus. Cirrus, from the Latin for lock of hair, means a tendril or fibrous shape. Cumulus, from the Latin for heap or pile, means a heap or pile. Stratus, from the Latin for layer, means a horizontal band. And nimbus, Latin cloud, is a rainy combination of all three previous types. It was, let me repeat, hard work to dash about the universe impersonating these four cloud formations, not to mention the ceaseless transitions between them with their seductive lacy gaps. And to keep this up day and night for years until Mr. Luke Howard gathered enough data for his taxonomy. It was an athletic time for me. I had to practice a lot. And the tricky thing about practicing, if you're the sky, is there's nowhere to go to be alone. You are already everywhere. I won't burden you with the solution I found for this. It involves string theory, and we haven't got to that day of the week yet. Mr. Luke Howard's taxonomy of clouds was just one small component of the scientization of all things that began with Descartes and has shaped the mess in which the present world finds itself. Still, I am perversely proud to have been part of it, insofar as my contribution was a work of fiction and ought to have subverted the whole taxonomic process. I admit I was surprised when reason prevailed. And from this I learn never to be surprised when reason prevails, especially if its data are imaginary. At the same time, the experience refreshed and refocused my own creative process. Let me quote here John Cage, "Something has to be done to get us free of our memories and choices." Wednesday. Exhausted with hauling myself around the upper air in cloud masquerade, I decided on Wednesday to sit at my desk, use the telephone, and do an interview. I interviewed pebbles and small rocks. Insofar as I have, so to speak, all the time in the world, I could interview all the pebbles and small rocks in the world simultaneously. Even so, it was a quiet experience. The questions were formulated as a sort of quiz. Here is a précis of the most interesting answers that the pebbles and small rocks gave to my quiz questions. Pay attention. 1, smoothness. 2, the Krumbane-Phi scale of sedimentology. 3, Mars. 4, golf on Mars. 5, put up signs expressing state of mind, for example, "Yes, I love you, help." My questions had been concerned with the following areas, respectively. 1, criteria for racial or class prejudice in your community. 2, a better way to judge the National Book Awards. 3, favorite vacation spot. 4, favorite vacation activity. 5, what you would do first if you had hands. Well, the pebbles and small rocks interview didn't even take all morning, so after lunch I picked up the phone again and called that gentleman everyone was waiting for in the latter part of the 20th century. Here is a transcription of our chat. First things first, do I call you Godot or Godot?
Why not use my first name?
Okay, what's your first name?
Rusty.
So, tell me, Rusty, how did it all get started, the non-arriving?
Started in a thinness.
What sort of thinness?
Thinness like that plate you climb back up over from behind when waking from a very flat dream.
Any narrative trajectory?
Keep moving at all times. Avoid touching the hole at the center of the thinness.
What's the hole for?
Discourage snooping.
Any music?
Oh, a honky-tonk sort of thing, mostly percussion. I didn't like it. I didn't write the music.
What about lighting?
Floodlights.
Oh, Rusty, how exhausting.
Exhausting, not to say boring. I would have been monumentally bored had I not met Yoko Ono, who gave me several suggestions for passing the time.
Like, for example?
Like, for example, send a note of appreciation to silent, courageous people you bump into, metal workers, mothers, street sweepers, etc. Keep doing it, see what happens.
That might be a good note to end on, faintly redemptive.
Oh, but listen, I have quite a few anecdotes left.
You know, Rusty, it's been a hard morning for me.
How so, Mr. Sky?
I've been trying to get a few sound bites out of the Pebbles and Small Rocks.
Pebbles and Small Rocks, say no more.
You know them?
Yeah, Mr. B auditioned a whole bunch of Pebbles and Small Rocks before he hired me.
Oh, one can see why.
Oh, sure. Good looks, natural talent, but no method, no sense of elsewhere. Pebbles and Small Rocks don't know how to bring it up from inside.
Did you enjoy working with him?
God, no, what a monster. If we asked him a question about the text, he'd warn us to be on guard against committing reason.
Sounds like John Cage.
Much harsher man than Cage. Build a little kingdom, then shit on it, he would say.
I am familiar with that impulse.
Well, time for my afternoon nap. Goodbye, Mr. Sky.
Thank you, Rusty. It has been a consoling hour. Thursday. Maybe because Wednesday had been a good day, almost Proustian, I made the mistake on Thursday of attempting to write a memoir of childhood, and all but vanished into its vortex of prehistoric pain. There were mountains piled on mountains, mothers frustrated, fathers castrated, brothers and sisters driven down to hell, the usual family horror and disputes about who gets to use the car. I won't bore you. I drew a big X through the manuscript, deleted it from my computer, and sent a note to Yoko Ono. Footnote 2. Memoir writing was, for me, a process that entailed long periods of silent reflection, during which I tried to keep my mind motionless and my eyes downcast. Here is my favorite thing to look at with eyes downcast. Forest shade, lake shade, poplar shade, highway shade, backyard shade, cafe shade, down behind the high school shade, cow shade, carport shade, blowing shade, dappled shade, shade darkened by rain above, shade under ships, shade along banks of snow, shade beneath the one tree in a bright place, shade by the ice cream truck, shade in the new car sales room, shade in the halls of the palace as all the electric lights turn on, shade in a stairwell, shade in tea barrels, shade in books, shade of clouds running over a distant landscape, shade on bales in the barn, shade in the pantry, shade in the ice house, the smell of shade, shade under runner blades, shade along branches, shade at night, a difficult research, shade on rungs of a ladder, shade on pats of butter sculpted to look like scallop shells, shade to holler from, shade in the chill of bamboo, shade at the core of an apple, confessional shade, shade in hair salons, shade in a joke, shade in the town hall, shade descending from legendary ancient hills, shade under the jaws of a dog with a bird in its mouth trotting along to the master's voice, shade at the back of the choir, shade in pleats, shade clinging to arrows in the quiver, shade in scars. Footnote 3. Meditating on shade led me to ponder absent presence in general and to begin to worry about those many sky-related questions which will undoubtedly remain unanswered in your mind after this lecture is finished. For example, 1, is the sky blue? 2, is the sky round? 3, is it proper to use the informal second-person singular pronoun tu or toi when addressing the sky? 4, do hawks and falcons look so fantastic rising and falling because they have the sky as background, or would they look equally good flying through mud or a piece of corduroy? 5, ontologically speaking, is the sky something or merely what is left over because everything else has edges? 6, Can the sky break? 6A, if it broke, could it be built again? 6B, if built again, would it change its ways? 7, is there one sky or many? 8, if many, do they know about each other or wonder? 9, are there some outcast skies? 10, is it true the question mark derives from the shape of the tail of a cat when surprised? Sorry, unfair question. Here's another. If a scholar of the Rig Veda went to a Chinese restaurant, what would his fortune cookie say? Answer, congratulations, you love Chinese food. Footnote 4. Now that we are so well embarked on footnotes, which have their own sort of sluggish energy, here's 4 minutes of deleted material from Wednesday's interview with Rusty. What does your father do?
Cows.
How many cows?
Oh, 5 or 6.
Do you help with the cows?
Every day down to the river we went.
What were those days like?
Long.
What'd you do?
Talk to them.
Talk to the cows.
No, mostly the plants. I studied all the plants, tasted all the plants, talked to all the plants, and introduced them to one another.
Why talk to the plants, not to the cows?
Plants know how to listen. Cows don't. Cows are lazy, especially ours. Ours never got enough to eat. People think that cows are fat and peaceful, but those are government cows. The government buses those cows ahead to anywhere there's going to be a photo op. Those are the cows that show up on TV, living the good life. But ours were scrawny and terrible, ran all over the place.
Still, those cow herding days must have been good training for you, for the non-arriving.
I guess.
Seems to me that although waiting is hard, especially waiting for something never arrives, never arriving is hard too, and has just about as much waiting in it.
Well, I've got a talent for it.
Me too, actually. Being the sky involves a good bit of just hanging there.
Oh, it's very different.
Different how?
Well, one thing, I have to keep out of sight, but then also, and this is a factor very few people appreciate about my work, non-arriving isn't one big simple thing. It's different every time, every case unique. It's tricky, layered psychological work. Analogies like web and maze come to mind. A long, painful, undirected intimacy between strangers with no common goal. Ideally, I make a slow appeal to feelings unexpressed and end up by drawing tears from the stone.
Sounds like the secret police.
And there's a piss load of research has gone into all this.
But here's a question I've been curious about for years, Rusty.
Let's have it.
Why do you never arrive? I know it's your job, your assignment, your role in the play, but tell me the truth. Isn't there something deeper going on?
Like what?
Like bearing witness to the atrocities of our time.
Nope.
Really?
Never gave a fart for atrocities.
You're not calling history to account? Using silence to speak louder than words? And put us all in the rear-view mirror of our mean and ending world?
Nope.
And we should draw no apocalyptic conclusions whatsoever from your steely reticence.
You know what? Every October I rake apocalyptic conclusions into a pile in the backyard and burn them.
Do you?
But I suspect we've lost track of your original question.
Which was, why don't you arrive?
Why don't I arrive?
Yes.
Okay, I'll give you an answer, but you won't like it, and you'll say we can't end there.
Shoot.
Who told me this was my Uncle Roy? I liked Uncle Roy. A short little man full of fantastic alibis. He worked for the State Department for a long time, then made a fortune by inventing the "You Are Here" map for public places. You know, the big map they have in parks and metro stops. And the thing about that "You Are Here" map is, by the time it's been a year and a half up, you is entirely rubbed off.
No kidding.
So says Uncle Roy.
They rub it right off.
Everybody wants to touch you when they're lost.
Huh.
Has to be painted back on.
I suppose it would.
It's one guy's entire job all day. Go around repainting second-person pronouns on "You Are Here" maps.
What about the red dot?
Well, the fact is, the red dot usually doesn't disappear. It's just the you.
Haunting.
No, it's a different kind of paint.
Oh.
So let me ask you a question now.
Okay.
How do you think the interview went?
Our interview?
Yeah, you're the expert. I'm just an amateur. And I like to know how other people go about their craft.
Well, to be honest, Rusty, I was a little disappointed in my own performance. In the sense that whenever I listen to interviews on the radio, they get in at least once and usually several times the question, and how did that make you feel? But with you, I didn't find any place to work it in.
Tell you what, I'll ask you that question.
Just out of the blue?
No, I'll give you context. Here, let's say it's dusk in America. You're not the sky anymore. You're some traveling salesman driving along a freeway. And you pass one of those suburban, what do you call it, housing developments with a lot of little houses all the same. And a big billboard that says, if you lived here, you'd already be home. How does that make you feel?
Wow, Rusty, what a great question. I have to think about that one.
Take your time.
Well, it makes me feel sad, then happy, happy, then sad. And here I'll quote Proust, who was, with that weird, devious moral power of his, able to capture in words so perfectly this quintessential experience of all the creeping creatures that creep upon the earth. And so it was, from the Guermantes way, that I learned to distinguish those states of mind that follow one another in me during certain periods, and that even go so far as to divide up each day among them, one returning to drive away the other with the punctuality of a fever, contiguous, but so exterior to one another, so lacking in means of communication among them that I can no longer understand, no longer even picture to myself in the one what I desired or feared or accomplished in the other. That was Swan's Way, translated by Lydia Davis.
I like it.
Me too. Friday. On Friday, I decided to delegate. Why do all this thankless work writing if I can hire a ghost? So for a while, I experimented with skywriters, sky typers, and sky dot matrix printers. There are aeronautical experts who perform all these media in little airplanes that exude picturesque white smoke. I have to say, though, I was disappointed in the level of invention overall. I had envisioned epic poems in hexameter verse arcing across the heavens from Patagonia to Paris. What I got was, I love you, Doris, and ads for Lucky Strike. But halfway through Friday, I realized I was on the wrong track. I was looking to the public for what could only be private. I had to step back from the marketplace to the inside of the mind. That's when I became a Hindu, or at least very deeply interested in what Hindu scholars of the Rig Veda mean by writing. The hymns of the Rig Veda contain the following suggestion. Something only exists if consciousness perceives it as existing. And if a consciousness perceives it, within this consciousness there must be another consciousness perceiving the consciousness that perceives, and so forth. You can pursue this regress in an inward direction, as Vedic scholars do, or you can go the other way and find sky upon sky upon sky, perceiving all the degrees of consciousness in the cosmos. You need to take a breath to think this, and your breath is the thinking. We think each other back and forth, your mind and me. We write one another. Put this a different way. Consciousness and sky, or mind and cosmos, are organically related. They mirror, they enact one another. The Vedic scholars whose care was to transmit the thousands of hymns and ritual directives and meditations that comprise the Rig Veda did so for 3 millennia by oral tradition, without writing down a single word, because they saw the text inscribed inside their minds. Of course, they had to pay attention, and for the most part, they were fantastically scrupulous, both in reading these inward texts and in performing the rituals prescribed. But a wonderful and forgiving aspect of Hindu thought, to me at least, is the notion they had that if someone did make a mistake in a ritual, a witness who noticed the error and who knew the correct text could mend the mistake on the sky of his mind and so make the cosmos perfect again, microphysically. I spent the rest of Friday noticing various acts of mending going on throughout the cosmos here and there. I felt calm and hopeful. Then about 12 o'clock, my mood changed. I'm not sure why. It was midnight, but darker. Saturday.
استيقظت يوم السبت متضارب الأفكار، وأدركت بخبرتي الشخصية أن هناك منطقة هائلة ما زالت غير مفسرة وغير مستكشفة. إن السماء كوسيلة للإبادة. الحرب هي إحدى حقائق الحياة لكل المخلوقات الزاحفة التي تزحف على الأرض، كما يصفها سفر التكوين في اليوم السادس. والحرب على الأغلب هي تاريخ لأشياء طيارة قاتلة، رصاص، قنابل، أقواس، رماح، الياقات الكبيرة، الفرقة ب52، السهام السامة، الغازات السامة، الأسلحة النووية المحمولة، المدافع، الطائرات بدون طيار، الفتاكة. دفعتني غريزة الأولى إلى تدوين ذلك كله في رواية جريمة سريعة الإيقاع. لقد وقعت جرائم بالتأكيد. اكتشفت استحالة وضع ذلك العمل الشرير الطويل في جبرية بسيطة تربط بين السبب والنتيجة. جرائم الخيال مكثفة دوما، تأثيرها على القارئ يكمن في تجسيد أوجه مكوناتها الجبرية: الضحية، المجرم، المحقق، الخير، الشر. أما الحرب فقد تعاظمت حتى أصبحت بلا وجه عبر تاريخها. بلا ريب فقد نظر كل من هكتور وأخيل إلى عين أحدهما الآخر في ميدان المعركة. ولكن في 1092 وجد البابا أوربان الثاني ضرورة في تحريم القوس والنشاب، ذلك بسبب بعد المسافة بين القاتل والضحية. وفي القرن 21 بكبسة زر واحدة يستطيع جندي في ولاية نيفادا قتل أو إحراق 5 في الباكستان. تقول فكرة قديمة: بدون وجه لا توجد أخلاق، لكن بدون وجه أيضا لا عمل لي، لا شيء لأكتب عنه. لا أحد يستطيع بناء جملة باستعمال الأفعال فقط، ولا أحد قادر على سرد قصة دون أن يؤمن بحقيقة الآخرين. وبعد أنا لم أتوقع منك أيتها المخلوقات الزاحفة يا من تزحفون على الأرض أن تكفوا عن رغبتكم في الحرب في وقت قريب، وأنا لم أتوقع ولن أتوقف عن إيصال رغباتكم الهستيرية عبر أثيري الأزرق. هذا ما نحن عليه. Saturday was the day to acknowledge this.
Saturday, I awoke conflicted, for I realized, autobiographically speaking, that there remained one vast area of self-experience as yet unexplored and unexplained, namely sky as a medium of annihilation. Warfare is a fact of life for all the creeping creatures that creep upon the earth, as the book of Genesis calls them on the 6th day. And warfare is mostly a history of death-bringing stuff flying through the air. Bullets, bombs, bows and arrows, Big Berthas, B-52s, poison darts, poison gas, portable nukes, cannonballs, curses, lethal drones. My first instinct was to fashion all this into a fast-paced crime novel. Certainly there were crimes. But it proved impossible to condense that long evil-doing into a simple algebra of cause and effect. Crime fiction is very condensed, and its impact on the reader derives from giving a face to the algebraic components: the victim, the criminal, the detective, the good, the bad. Warfare has grown increasingly faceless throughout its history. Surely Hector and Achilles looked into each other's eyes on the battlefield. But in 1092, Pope Urban II found it necessary to outlaw the crossbow as being inglorious due to its distance from death. And by the 21st century, a soldier in Nevada can push a button and have 5 people in Pakistan burst into flame. Without the face, no ethics. This is an old idea. But also without the face, no function for me, nothing to write about. No one can make sentences using only verbs. No one can tell a story without believing in the reality of other people. Yet I don't expect all you creeping creatures that creep upon the earth to stop wanting warfare anytime soon. And I don't expect me to stop delivering the hysterical valentines of your desire through my beautiful blue air. That's who we are. Saturday was the day to acknowledge this. Every writer's week arrives at a Saturday, a day when he wishes it were Monday again and he could start over with the innocence of his first sonnets, or even the relative rectitude of Tuesday, when the Enlightenment was dawning and Immanuel Kant was writing sentences like, "Two things move me to wonder, the starry sky above me and the moral law within me." Those starry skies don't come back. So now it is Sunday. Creation rests. I close my notes. Like every author, when I come to the end of a piece of writing, it is quite clear to me that I will never write again. The upper air, the middle air, the lower air is blank. Blankness plunges out of it. Blankness plunges out of it and goes elsewhere. And I suppose it will arrive. The end.
So I guess I'll begin with a little bit of a story, which is a condensed version of how Faisal, our client, came to be participating in this poetry reading and sitting with you here today. Faisal bin Ali Jaber, I met in 2013. He is an engineer, an environmental engineer who worked for the Yemen's ozone department. And although Reprieve is a human rights organization, we like to think of ourselves as kind of swashbuckling human rights lawyers and investigators who go to the field and find people. What was so special about Faisal was actually that he found us. I didn't find him. I wish I could say that I went out and I found him and I located him, but actually he came to me at a meeting that we were having in Yemen, in the capital, in 2013, to talk about civilian victims of drone attacks. And he told me a story about what had happened to him and to his family, and he wanted to know whether there was something we could do to find him some justice. And it's a long story and it's a sad story, and so I'm afraid I'll only be giving you a condensed version here, but there's a lot that you can actually read about it. It's one of the best documented cases of terrible mistake that has happened since the drone war began. It began with a wedding. Faisal's eldest son is called Wahab. He's a doctor. And as they do, everybody was gathering in a village in the east of Yemen called Hashamer from where everybody comes for a hometown celebration. This was the summer in 2012, a little less than 4 years ago. In Yemen, when they have celebrations, when everybody gets married, they sort of party for a week. It's not just a one-day celebration, and relatives from all over Yemen gathered together in the town to celebrate the wedding of Faisal's son, Wahab. And there were a couple of special guests at the wedding. One of them was an imam called Salim, who was Faisal's brother-in-law and a very special guest. Salim came from the east of Yemen, from the capital called Mukalla over there, and he had run a program preaching against al-Qaeda, preaching against the insurgency there, and talking to young men about the dangers of so-called extremism and giving them other alternatives. Faisal gave a guest sermon in the mosque, in the village mosque in Hashamar, the Friday before the wedding of Faisal's eldest son. And as he had many times before, Salim denounced al-Qaeda. He denounced the killing of innocents and drone attacks. And he said, I challenge anybody in this room to tell me one piece of evidence that says that the killing of innocents is justified in Islam. It is totally contrary to Islam. And Faisal is the host of the wedding, and he starts to hear from some of the family members who were in the congregation, it was a big congregation in the town, that they were a little bit nervous. And they said to him as the host, word travels, word does travel, and although, we think we know people here, there is rumor. Could you just have a word with Salim as the host? And Faisal said, okay, sure, I'll talk to him. And Faisal takes Salim aside and he says, people are worried that people are going to hear about the program and you're going to put yourself in danger. And Salim said, well, that's my job. That's my job as a community leader and an imam, and if I don't do it, then who will? Those of you who have gone to Laura's exhibit, Astro Noise, will have then seen what subsequently happened because Faisal contributed some of the footage, his family footage, to that exhibit. The first day of the week is the wedding. It's the wedding that everybody had waited from. It's the wedding of Wahab, his eldest son. You can see Faisal in the footage. There's music, there's drums, there's dancing. You told me once before that it was the happiest day of your life at that time. And then something happened. Afterwards, on a later day of celebrations, 3 young men, unknown to the villagers, strangers to the villagers, came to the village and they asked for Salim. Salim was out, he was busy, people were worried. He didn't come out for most of the day. The youths went away and they were young men. They weren't old men, they were young men. But they came back. And finally, after the sun went down and Salim had held the final prayer in the mosque of the day, he asked other people what he should do, and he decided that he would go down and he would talk to the young men. And he was joined by one of Faisal's relatives, Faisal's nephew, Walid, who was one of this tiny town's 2 policemen. And they went together, as the sun had gone down, to sit down and talk to these 3 young men whom we still don't know their names. We believe that they wanted to talk to Salim about his sermon, that perhaps somebody had heard what he had said, and that they wanted to talk to him. More than that, we don't know and we never will, because the United States drone killed all 5 of them in a single go. The imam had preached against al-Qaeda, Faisal's brother-in-law, Walid, his nephew, and the 3 unknown youths. Faisal, you and I have obviously talked about this a lot. You were at your house up the side of the hill in the village when you heard the explosion. And you told me before how you came down to the village and went through and ultimately saw for the first time the wreckage, the burning vehicle. This footage is in the exhibit. You can see it. You can see what was left of the family members and of the car. Is there something you can tell us about that moment? About how the moment felt?
انت لما نزلت فهمت عليها لما نزلت شفت وين انضرب في شيء ممكن تضيف على القصة اللي حكتها للناس؟
حقيقة الأمر أنه أول ما وصلت للموقع طبعا شاهدت البشر طبعا لم يعودوا بشر سواء قطع متفحمة.
Truth of the matter is, when I first got to the place, all I could see are bodies, but the bodies weren't bodies. They were just burned.
دخلت في حالة من الإغماء، يعني أحسست كأننا بس أشاهد فيلم من أفلام الرعب العائلي.
I felt like I was going to faint, and I was watching a horror, something that came from a horror movie.
يعني فضلت على هذه الحالة، رجعت البيت يعني خلاص تخيلت أن الموضوع ليس حقيقة وإنما هو فيلم، هكذا تهيأ لي من الصدمة احتمال يعني.
I felt and continued to feel that way until I got home, and it just seemed to register that maybe because I was in shock or anything, was that really what happened?
حوالي نص ساعة من وصلت البيت جاء أخي الأكبر مع أبنائه وأبناء أختي الكبيرة.
After a half hour from me arriving the home, my sister and brother-in-law, and the children came to the house.
طبعا استقبلتهم في حالة من يعني جدا أضحك وليس لا يبدو علي شيء من الخوف بسبب يمكن الصدمة النفسية.
I welcomed them cheerfully when they arrived. Again, it was probably because I was in shock.
ولكن أخي الأكبر مسك بأكتافي بقوة وضغط علي وقال لي يجب أن تكون رجل لابد أن تصحى، الموضوع جد، وليد مات وسالم مات. قلت له اليوم ليلة.
But my brother held me by my shoulders and shook me, and he said that you need to know that this is true, that Walid's dead and Salim's dead.
لم أكن مصدقا، ولكن دفعني بشدة إلى إلى السيارة في المقعد الأمامي. قال لي نطلع نرى أختنا الكبيرة اللي هو أم وليد في القرية الأخرى نخبرها يعني.
So, and then he pushed me to the car and sat me in front so we can go see Walid's mom, who was in the neighboring village.
ولكن حتى اللحظة تحركت السيارة منحدرة مع الجبل من البيت، برضو لم أكن مدرك للحظة.
But even as the car began to move down the hill, I didn't really understand what had happened.
وكنت أحاول يعني أقول لهم ليس هناك شيء، لم يحصل أي شيء أبدا، ليش أنتوا كذا؟
And I kept telling them that nothing really happened. Why do you keep insisting that something happened?
وأثناء حديثي لفت للخلف المقعد الخلفي، رأيت أبناء أختي وأبناء أخي الكبير اللي كان بيسوق هو، فلما لفت إليهم رأيت الدموع ينحدر من عينهم. عندها أفقت في تلك اللحظة، أفقت أننا في مصيبة فعلا.
It was only when as I was sitting in front, I looked into the rear seat and I saw my sister and her children and there are tears on their eyes. Only at that second did I really understand that it was true.
فحطت راسي على كابينة السيارة وبدأت أبكي يعني.
And that's when I put my head on the front of the dashboard and began crying.
ثم ما تبع ذلك هو الموقف صعب جدا عندما وصلنا إلى القرية الأخرى ونظرت أختي إلى نحن مجموعين كلنا أمام الباب ولكن وليد لم يكن موجود.
And then the hardest moment was when we arrived to the neighboring village to see my sister, and we were all at the front of the house and everyone was there except Walid.
فصرخت على طول وانبطحت على الأرض وتصيح وليد 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 على طول.
And my sister fell to the ground and she started screaming Walid's name over and over again.
طبعا لحظات جدا صعبة بالنسبة لي لا أستطيع أن أنساها، ولكن أكتفي الآن بهذا القدر من الشعور.
Those were difficult moments and I'll never forget them, but that's about as much as I can share right now.
And did somebody at that time from the government contact you? Was there an official from the government of Yemen who contacted you at that time?
في مسؤول من الحكومة اليمنية اتصلوا فيك بعد هذاك اللحظة؟
نعم، تقريبا حوالي ساعتين ونص من الحادث أو 3 ساعات، لا متأكد بالضبط. بعد أن تأكدت من أنه العائلة كلهم على الأقل في حالة جيدة من البيوت، يعني أنا مريت على معظم البيوت بعد ما رجعت من القرية الأخرى.
Someone did contact him from the Yemeni government 2 or 3 hours after the bombing.
فكان بيتكلم مع شيخ القرية، أو شيخ القرية كان بيتكلم مع شخص أنا ما كنت عارف من هو هذا الشخص، ولكن بعدين دفع التليفون إليه وقال لي يا أخي كلم هذا الشخص. فتحدثت معه، فطلع الشخص اسمه محمد من صنعاء من العاصمة يتصل، قال هو ضابط في شرطة مكافحة الإرهاب.
The person was talking on the phone to someone in the village. He was there, the phone got handed to him. The name of the person on the phone was Walid. He was Muhammad, sorry. The name of the person was Muhammad from the capital Sana'a, and he was in the anti-terrorism unit.
Yeah. فمباشرة اعتذر لي وقال إن الحادث غير مقصود، وأنه سالم ووليد ليسوا مقصودين في الحادث، وأنه كان في خطأ.
He immediately apologized and said that it was a mistake and that Salim and Walid were not the targets, and he deeply apologized.
أنا كنت في حالة من الزعل وقلت له هذا الكلام لا يكفي، لأنه نحن عايزين نعرف الحقيقة، نريد التحقيق في هذا الموضوع.
I told him that's not enough. I was in a very angry state, and I told him that we need people to look into this.
عندها قال إنه هذا الأمر ليس بيده، وإنما هو مرتبط برئيس الجمهورية، وعليك أن تتصل في رئيس الجمهورية.
And that official on the phone said that is not my purview. It's the purview of
رئيس الجمهورية,
for the head of the state of Yemen, and you need to take up that matter with him.
طلبت منه رقم الرئاسة، رقم التليفون يعني، فأعطاني الرقم.
So I asked him for the number of the office of the president, and he gave it to me.
And since that time, Ustaz Faisal, you've been basically on a 3.5-year quest for justice for the rest of your family, for an apology and an explanation. Because, of course, while the Yemeni government may have been involved in taking Salim's and Walid's lives, ultimately it was the United States who killed them. You and I went together in November of 2013 to Washington for the first time. I guess that was it was the first time you went to America, right? Yeah, so we went to Washington. And we talked to a bunch of officials. We talked to people in the Congress. We talked to a couple of senators, and you met with 2 people in the White House National Security Council even. So we got very close to the people who authorized the killing of his relatives. And people expressed private condolences, but there was never an official apology as such. How did you feel about those kind of conversations, those first conversations with Americans about your experience? Were kind of how you expected, or how did you find that experience?
شو كان شعورك وانطباعك عن المحادثات اللي صارت بواشنطن دي سي بالنسبة للي صار، يعني المحادثات واللقاءات، شو كان انطباعك؟
طبعا فكرة زيارة أمريكا كانت مطروحة من قبل ريبريف مدام كوري طبعا. لكن حقيقة الأمر أنا لا أخفي إنه عندما استشرت اللجنة اللي في القرية اللي مكونة لمتابعة هذه القضية والناس، كان في هناك اعتراض كبير من ناسنا في القرية.
the thought to go to the United States came from Reprieve and from Cori. When I brought that idea to the council in the village who's been following this issue, they were against the idea of coming to the United States.
فكرتهم إن ماذا تعمل في أمريكا؟ أنت بتروح تستجدي هؤلاء الناس وهم أعداء في الأخير، هم اللي من قتلونا يعني.
Because the idea is, why would you go to the United States to ask for their help when they are the enemy and they are the people who killed our family?
ولكن بعد نقاش مستفيض مناقشة كل أوجه فعلا كان في طرح جيد من كثير من الناس من العقلاء داخل القرية أنه لا بد من إيجاد وسيلة أخرى للتفاهم مع الناس وليست فقط بالعضلات والقوة والقتل يعني.
But after an extensive conversation in the council, in the village, with a lot of different opinions, some cooler heads prevailed on the idea of there must be another way other than using force, and that it may make sense to go to the United States.
حقيقة الأمر فعلا هذا الاتجاه هو الصائب، لأنه أنا أول ما وصلت واشنطن رغم خوفي من دخول واشنطن إلا أننا وجدت أن هناك شيئين مختلفين. هناك شعب أمريكي وممثلين لهذا الشعب. شعرت كأنهم عائلتي نفسا. أي واحد يسمع قصتي على طول بيتأسف أن الحكومة الأمريكية فعلت هذا.
Truth of the matter is that once I arrived to DC, I realized that there were two Americas almost. There was what we've managed to experience, and then the people that you come in contact with. Anyone who I told them my story, they really kind of empathized, or I felt like they were also my family.
نعم، وأدركت الحقيقة أنه فعلا بقدر ما هناك شر هناك خير أكثر يعني في الناس.
And I realized that as much as there's evil in people, there's more goodness.
So it seems that the administration took some notice of this, actually listened to what Faisal had to say in a certain sense. They didn't apologize, they didn't explain. There is still to this day no official apology. But something did happen. After the trip, you went back to Yemen and you continued to do your work as an engineer in Sana'a. And one day, as you told me before, you got a call, didn't you, from a member of Yemen's security services calling you into his office. And you said to me that you went in with another member of the Family Committee for Justice, and that the man from the security services basically held out to you a plastic bag like you would get in a bodega. You want to tell everybody what was in the bag?
طبعا في خلال الزيارة لواشنطن أنا حصلت تأكيدات من نواب الشعب وكذلك من الحكومة الأمريكية ومن مثلوا أو من التقيتهم ممثلوا أوباما بأنه في هناك تعويض كحل المشكلة اللي صار خطأ ويكون هناك في تعويض. وأنا
No. When I was in DC, I met with a lot of representatives in government, and there were, after the many conversations, what they were talking about is something like compensation, like form of compensation that can make the wrong right.
لكن حقيقة الأمر أنا فهمت بالcompensation إنه هذا بيكون رسمي أمام كل الناس معلن في الإعلام وبالتالي هذا يفيد صراعنا مع فكر القاعدة داخل القرية.
But what I understood is that form of compensation or making whole would be something that is public, that is made public, so that it can help in the struggle against the drone kind of warfare that we're experiencing in Yemen.
Or struggle against terrorist al-Qaeda.
And also in terms of the Yemeni struggle against terrorism.
Yeah, that is the point exactly. The terrorist. We have a problem actually. هناك مشكلة لأنه بسبب الدرونز فناس القاعدة يستطيعوا أن يستقطبوا الشباب صغار السن من حكاية أنهم يحاربوا أمريكا ولأن أمريكا تجي تحت فهذا الفكر عايزين.
This is the important point that he wants to make. The compensation was important because basically the way the terrorists recruit is by pointing to the fact that drones kill people, and that's how they get the youth in. So the idea of compensation made public would then counteract that kind of narrative or that kind of recruitment.
And so when you kind of look into when you look in and it's a secret payment, I mean, what did you guys think about that, really?
ولكن الصدمة حقيقة عندما اتصلوا ناس المخابرات اليمنية ورحت قابلتهم فأخرج كيس قال لي إنه في شيء لك هنا موجود من قال في حاجة لك كذا فراح مخرج الكيس إيش هذا قال هذا إيش فيها قال فيها $100,000
And there was $1,000 in that bag when he went.
100,000.
100,000 in that bag, thank you. 100,000 in that bag that they pulled out when he went to the secret service or the interrogation folks.
يعني هذا كان صدمة بالنسبة لي أنا ما في حد ممكن يسلم مصاري بهذه الطريقة إطلاقا ولا لا في اليمن ولا في أي بلد آخر يعني.
It's like no one would give 100,000 in a bag like that, not in Yemen, not anywhere. So it was a shock to him.
فحاولت أعرف منه من وضع هذا من أعطاك الفلوس قال لي يا أخي هذا أنا ما أعرف من وهذه عملية سرية خالص.
So he kept asking, trying to understand, trying to find out where did the money come from, and the only thing that the person said is that that's a secret, you can't know, here's the money.
في الأخير أنا قلت له هذا يا أخي أنا أعتقد أن الفلوس هذه من أمريكا لأن أنا كنت في أمريكا وكان في تعويض مفروض أن يجي من أمريكا.
So he told him, I think this is from the United States government. That was offered when I was in DC. That's where I think the money is coming from.
بعد كذا هو أكد هذا شفويا ولكن رفض أن يكتب كتابة أن هذه من أمريكا.
After I said that, he confirmed it verbally to me that it was from the US government, but he refused to write it on paper.
في تلك اللحظة وذلك اليوم أنا رفضت أيضا أن أستلم الفلوس بهذه الطريقة.
And I refused to accept that money that way on that day.
And why was that? Why didn't you want to take it at that time?
ليش ما رفضت تاخذ المصاري بهذيك اللحظة؟
طبعا كانت مفاجأة بالنسبة لي وصدمة ولا بد أن أرجع للجنة لأنها أنا عضو في اللجنة مكونة من 5 أشخاص في القرية ولا برجع لهم أشوف إيش رأيهم في الموضوع.
I mean, aside from it being a shock, I needed to go back to the committee that's working for the justice of this family, who he's a member of that committee, and discuss it with the committee.
And what you ultimately told me was that they talked it over. Salam and Walid were the breadwinners of their family. And although everyone was displeased, ultimately the committee accepted the money, but that at the moment they're holding it basically in trust, waiting for somebody to apologize. Is that right?
بدي أتأكد المعلومة إنه بعد ما حكيتهم باللجنة قبلتوا المصاري بس هلا لأنه وليد وسالم هم اللي كانوا بيشتغلوا بحصلوا مصاري يعني إنه بيطعموا العيال لكن المصاري هلا ممسوكة ومش ما عم تستغلوها بإشي عم بتحافظوا عليها تمنها توصلكم الاعتذار الرسمي.
أيوة هي بالضبط هاي
exactly right.
هذه الفكرة نعم بالموضوع لكن طيب قول المصاري هو على أساس إنه نوع من الدليل بيدك فإذا أنت رفضت لنا ومشيت فممكن يتصرفوا الأمن بطريقة أخرى في ده فنحن ماسكين المصاري لليوم معنا على أساس إنها دليل نشوف كيف مع أمريكا.
That, but also it's evidence. And so we're holding on to the money as evidence in our quest for justice.
I just want to make a point of comparison here. On April 23rd of last year, the president actually did apologize to 2 people who died in a drone attack. It was the first time he had ever acknowledged the names of people he had mistakenly killed as part of the drone war. The names of the two people he acknowledged and apologized for, you may remember, were Warren Weinstein, a U.S. citizen, and Giovanni Laporto, an Italian citizen, both of whom had been hostages in Pakistan when they were mistakenly killed in a strike. And you and I talked about that too. We talked about how the message sent by that difference, well-intentioned as it may be, to try and give one family money, is that there are certain kinds of people with certain kinds of passports who deserve an acknowledgement, who deserve some kind of explanation, who deserve an apology, and then there's everybody else. So since that time, Faisal, and that's all, I mean, that's happened as part of our kind of long struggle for justice, but in addition to the legal case and in addition to the political work that we've been doing, we've been trying all kinds of non-traditional ways of reminding Americans exactly what the drone war looks like, and indeed reminding Yemenis exactly how this is harming their political situation there. We actually had a poetry competition over in Yemen, and you contributed, as I said, some of the footage that you now can see upstairs in Laura's exhibit. We went up to see it for the first time today, and I just wondered if you wanted to say anything more about going up into there and kind of watching your own footage, your own story presented to Americans, to citizens of that country as part of an art exhibit. How did you find it? How did you find going through watching the video there?
هي بلشت بالحديث إنه يعني لأول مرة الحكومة الأمريكية بتعذر لهذولاك الأشخاص اللي هم غربيين. بس كملت بتحكي إنه إحنا بنحاول يعني إنه يعني عن طريق القانون بس بطرق أخرى بما فيها الشعر واللي عملتوها المسابقة اللي عملتوها باليمن اللي أنت شاركت فيها. فيعني إنه عن طريق الفن. بس أنت السؤال بالذات لما أنت كنت على الطابق الثامن ومرقت يعني بالإشي اللي موجود هناك وشفت أنت الإشي اللي أنت برضه صورته، الفوتج اللي أنت صورته. يعني شارك معنا شو كان هذا الشعور أو شو كان شعورك لما فوق على الطابق الثامن؟
طبعا أنا حكيت في القضية في 2013 ولكن الآن هي بتحكى بأشكال أخرى وهذا الشيء جيد.
I've talked about this case since 2013, but what I'm noticing is that it's being talked about in different ways now.
نعم، وعندما تدخل خصوصا الفن فيها فهي برضو بيضفي عليها بعد آخر يعني.
And when art comes into the talking about or the story, it gives it different dimensions. It adds dimensions to it.
شاهدت الفيديو وقبل أن أشاهد الفيديو كان هناك أناس قبلي وكنت أنا ماسك طابور أنا على أساس أشاهد هذا الفيديو. الفيديو مكون من جزئين. الفيديو هو واحد خاص باليوم الأول اللي هو يوم الفرح، يوم الزواج يعني. ثم المقطع الآخر هو اللي خاص بما عقب الفرح، عندما انقلب الفرح. لا، الفيديو الأول يوم الفرح وهو رقص ولعب في يوم الفرح، وكان شيء سعيد جدا. وقد شاهدت صورتي أنا وصهر ابني وأصحابي وأصدقائي وهم يرقصوا ويلعبوا في الفرح.
So I've watched the footage that's up on the 8th floor. I've watched other people watch it, and you know, it's consistent of two parts. The first part was of the wedding itself, where I'm in it, my children are in it. We're all very happy.
Yeah. الجزء الثاني هو اليوم التالي وهو عندما انقلبت الأفراح إلى أتراح.
And the part 2 of the footage, or what's up there, is that it's the day after the killing, and where happiness is flipped on its head.
على قدر ما شعرت بالحزن بالتذكر بهذا الموضوع، إلا أنني عرفت يعني إنه كم هو جميل جدا أن القصة تحكى بالطرق الأخرى وليس في بلد آخر ولكن في أمريكا نفسها يعني، وهذا الشيء جميل جدا.
As much it was kind of painful to watch, I found beauty in that the story is being told in other ways and not in any other place but the United States, where it was a cause for that.
نعم، وأن تجد من مواطني الولايات المتحدة من يتحمس لأفكارهم هذه ثم يصيغها فنا ويعرضها. هؤلاء الناس هم فعلا ليشعروك بقيمة الحياة.
To have people over here being touched by certain ideas and those ideas get converted or influenced in art in a way that art then comes to influence and give meaning to life.
Thanks, Faisal. There was one other part of the exhibit that really made me think about your story and about, you know, all the conversations that we've had about the situation that goes on, not just one moment, but continuously for the people who have to live under the drones. And again, those of you who've seen Astro Noise will know it. And it's, you know, we went through the whole thing together. And so we sat there and we lay back on the platform and looked up at the video version of the sky of Yemen with the clouds coming over and thinking about, you know, as Laura set it up to do, what it must be like to have the possibility that somebody will come out of that sky and will kill some member of your family. And, you know, it was a Sunday morning and it was a busy time at the Whitney. And so I heard kids kind of going through playing and laughing, as you would expect a kid to. And I thought to myself, how different that was from what you told me about the kids in your community, how before they would travel. Well, you go on and say about what the difference is.
Yeah. حقيقة فعلا هذاك الجزء جزء ممتاز جدا وفكرة جيدة فكرته، خصوصا عندما اضطجعت وشاهدت السماء والبيوت اليمنية برضو مباشرة مع السماء.
To be honest, that was a really moving part of the exhibition, especially when I laid on my back and I looked at the sky and I saw Yemeni houses in Yemen.
Yeah.
In the video, of course, yeah.
طبعا أود أن أسجل كمان شكري للسيدة لورا على هذا العمل وعلى المتحف هذا برضو وتعاونهم مع ريبريف.
And I also want to just put on record that I thank Laura for the collaboration and also for making that video.
عندما كنت مضطجعا فعلا سمعت أولاد صغار بيضحكوا للسماء، ولكن الأمر بالنسبة ليمن مختلف، ليس هناك الأولاد لا يضحكوا هناك الآن.
But the situation in Yemen is different. The children, they don't laugh and smile
نعم
to the sky
نحن في الجزء
like in the
هذا
video.
في الجزء هذا من اليمن مناطق ريفية ودائما السماء عندنا صافية ونتمتع فعلا بالنجوم والقمر.
The sky by us and they're kind of outside of the city. It's very clear and we enjoy the stars at night.
ومن ضمن ثقافة الناس بأنه في الصيف يرقدوا في السطوح كلهم ويتمتعوا بمنظر السماء.
And part of the culture is sleeping on the rooftops at night and enjoying the sky.
لكن بعد أن بدأ برنامج الطائرات بدون طيار لم تعد السماء شيء جميل.
But after the drones program began by us, the sky was no longer something beautiful that we can enjoy. It's something that you're kind of afraid of.
Yeah. الآن لن تجد ولا شخص واحد يرقد في السطح والحاجب الصيب نهائيا على الإطلاق. لن تجد أي شخص يخرج إلى مزرعته إذا كانت مزرعته نائية لأنه ممكن يشك فيه. الناس تتشابه.
But now it's like you really don't. You avoid going out into remote areas where places that kind of could be seen as suspicious, or because people often get confused with other people within the drone program.
We can't sleep also on the.
And there's also no sleeping on the rooftop. I mean, that's stuff you don't do anymore in the summer.
بنت حكى إذا بنتكلم عن أطفال اليمن الآن تقريبا بالليل ممنوع أن يشاهد السماء.
خالص.
So if you're going to talk about the children of Yemen, they're forbidden from seeing this being on the rooftops
At night.
of houses at night.
I think that's actually a good point to turn it over to the audience for questions. Before we do, again, I just want to reiterate my thanks to Laura and the whole team who put together Astro Noise. I know there's some of you here, and to the Whitney for having us and for connecting us to all of you. Now, I think that there are a couple of microphones that'll be passed around. So if you just indicate whether you've got a question, we'll get you one so you can be heard.
I just wonder if Faisal could share his arrival in the United States 2 nights ago. I thought it was a very interesting story.
I'm glad you asked. I think this is actually quite a funny story. He's heard that you had a little bit of an episode at the border trying to come. That's the thing, is that he hasn't just come a very long way, although now you live in Canada. But anyway, he hasn't just flown to here to talk to you about his experience, but actually he had a little bit of an obstacle at the border. So do you wanna tell everybody about what happened when you tried to come into the country this time?
حابب تحكي لهم عن ايش صار قبل يومين لما حاولت تدخل
يعني أنا شايفه أمر عادي بس.
He says, I consider it a normal thing, but
يعني التصرف زي هذا أنا بشوف إنه ليس هو ضدي وإنما هو لمصلحتي، هو ضد أي شخص عايز يعمل حاجة، يعمل مشكلة تخريب أو شيء في البلد. فلهذا أنا كنت سعيد فيه، ما ليست زعلان منه، ولكن ما جرى بالضبط.
I mean, in general, these kind of procedures are something that I perceive as not against me, but to protect me and all of us. And in that sense, you know, it was fine, but.
Yeah.
Always the but.
هو يمكن الظريف في الموضوع هو أنه ماذا تريد أن تفعل في واشنطن؟ فأنا حقيقة الأمر لدي معلومات بسيطة عن السيدة لورا، هو أننا نشترك في إلقاء الشعر مع السيدة آن، وما عنديش تفاصيل كثيرة عن ماذا النشاط مع لورا يعني.
So, you know, when asked what is the purpose of your visit, to visit, he was asked Washington, D.C., like you said Washington, D.C., what's the purpose of your visit? And he doesn't know much about Laura's work other than what he's coming here to do. And so, and so he's, I'm a poetry thing with Anne and Laura, and it's.
وهو سألني طبعا في بداية الأمر أنت في مونتريال إيش بتعمل يعني؟
But he asked in Montreal, what are you doing?
فأنا قلت له ما أعمل شيء، ما عندي عمل جالس.
He's like, I'm not doing anything. I don't have a job. I'm just sitting.
Faisal's been, that's not true. You're studying French. Like, I can't get you on the phone. You're always studying your French. Faisal was recently given asylum in Canada, and so he's building
فأكيد هو عنده حق، فبدأ يعني إيش الحكاية يعني ده. ففي الأخير قال لي طيب بتعرف لورا جيدا؟ قلت له لا أعرفها بالإيميل فقط، من خلال الإيميل يعني.
So he said, he was asked, do you know Laura well? And he said, I don't know, I just know her via email or Skype? And Skype.
سألني ما تعرف إيش تعمل؟ قلت له لا هي artist يعني.
And do you know what she does? And he responded that she's an artist.
بعدين قال لي ما تعرف إنها مرأة مشهورة يعني جدا مشهورة جدا.
You don't know, so then he was asked, you don't know that she's a very famous woman?
فللأسف قلت له لا أبدا أنا ما أعرف.
No, I don't.
يعني الحقيقة حقيقة أنا أعرف، فيمكن شوية بس قال إنه لابد ما فيك أنت تعطيها فيديوهات تخص عائلتك بالشكل هكذا، ممكن تستخدمها بشكل خاطئ.
هم حكوا لك هيك؟
هو قال كذا. فتكون حذر في الموضوع هذا. فقلت له أنا ما أعرف لورا، لكن أعرف الناس في ريبريف، وأنا أثق فيهم جدا يعني وهم من نصحوني بهذا.
So the interrogator, well, the person that was asking him the questions, then, but first he wants to make clear that he really doesn't know much about Laura. But then, the person who was asking him the questions was telling him, you shouldn't give your footage because, you don't know how that will be used, and you don't know her that well, so you should really be careful. And then he said, it's true, I don't know her that well, but I know people in Reprieve, and on that basis, I share.
Yeah. رجع مرة أخرى أنا أعطيته رسالة لورا فبدأ يقرأ ده فأنا برضو في كلام كثير ما فاهمه ده.
So then I also gave him the letter from Laura, which has a lot of stuff in it, content that he doesn't really understand.
فأنا حاولت أقطع حديثه قلت له يا أخي إذا بتسألني عن مشكلتي اللي صار علي أنا ممكن أحكي لك إذا معك وقت يعني فيما يخص سالم ووليد وإذا كان أما بالنسبة للاورا أنا.
He's like, if you want to ask me questions about the things that happened to me, my story, and you have time, I'll tell you. But in terms of Laura, I know nothing. Like.
قال لي إيه ممكن تحكي لي شوية عن لا فحكيت الكلام اللي سمعته الآن عن للأسف سالم ووليد فأخذ اسم القرية والمنطقة وقال امهلني 5 دقائق.
So he did want to hear my story, and I told him the story of Salim and Walid, and he wrote down
in brief يعني
in brief. And he wrote down the name of the village and some other details. And he said, give me 5 minutes.
حوالي 5 دقائق رجع وعلى طول سلم علي وهج بحرارة وقال لي أنا متأسف لما حصل لعائلتك أنا متأسفين وكل حاجة وحبيت أنصرف فقال لي لا أنا أخذني معاه يعني لا وحاول يروينا وين لقيت الخروج يعني المهم ساعدني وكان very kind جدا يعني.
So after 5 minutes he came back and he kind of shook his hand with warmth and he offered a sincere apology about what happened and he insisted that he take him to the gate and help him.
نعم أنا شكرته كمان وقلت له يا أخي أنا الآن أحسست أنك تماما مثل أولئك الناس الذي شاهدتهم في واشنطن في بداية زيارتي من الناس.
And I thanked him and I told him, now you remind me of the people that I met in Washington, my first trip.
Thanks for asking, Pratap. I love that story because I feel like, it's like Anne's, as the lecture says, without a face, no ethics. I feel like, there's a man who began very suspicious, not just of Laura, but of you. And then, the moment that you hear the story, the moment you engage, suddenly the humanity breaks through. And again, in so many ways, I feel like you keep telling the story and making people understand that. Have we got any more questions? It looks like there may be one, yeah.
Yeah. Hi. I was going to ask you, in light of the atrocities that you've endured at the hands of this country, how will you ever find forgiveness in your heart for what you've experienced?
بعد الإشي اللي مريتوا فيه والتجربة عم تسألك عمرك بتلاقي إنك تقدر ترحم أو تعذر الإشي اللي صار من هاي الدولة؟
ما فهمت ترحم؟
مش ترحم يعني إنه forgive يعني إنه خلص إنه
تسامح يعني؟
تسامح أيوة حبيبي تسامح
لا أتذكر
يعني إنه في بقلبك بتحس إنه ممكن أنت عمرك تقدر تسامح هاي الدولة على الإشي اللي صار معك.
المشكلة الحقيقية ليس أنا في العمر هذا عندي قناعات خاصة يعني في من ضمن هذه القناعات إنه مهما غلط عليك الشخص الآخر فأنت لا بتتعامل بأخلاقك بما تعتقد.
So to be honest, he's not the problem. There's others. He's like, for me, I have a set of principles at this age, and one of them is that a person that does you wrong, you know, doesn't dictate the kind of ethics that you have.
لكن المشكلة مجتمعي هناك والأولاد الصغار.
The problem is the society back in Yemen and the children.
صارت العملية بالنسبة صعبة الآن لإقناعهم أن هذا الفكر خاطئ بسبب أنه كمان ليست في هناك مبادرة من أمريكا مثلا لتصحيح هذا الخطأ.
It's very difficult to convince the people there of that at this point. It's very hard, especially when there's no other alternative program or no other changing on part of the US government.
ويروا أنه ليس هناك فرق إذا كان بنقول أن القاعدة إرهابيين فليس هناك فرق في العمل فهي بنتقوم بنفس العمل.
And part of like the discourse is like part of the conversation is that saying that it's wrong and Al-Qaeda is a terrorist organization, then also the United States is a terrorist organization for purposes of that kind of conversation that they're having.
مع الفرق أنه القاعدة هم معترفين أنهم ناس إرهابيين وأنهم يقتلوا الناس وليس لديهم قانون ولكن هذه دولة مفروض بها ترعى حقوق الآخرين يعني وهي دولة.
With the obvious difference that Al-Qaeda claims to be a terrorist organization, doesn't kind of follow laws, versus the United States that claims to follow the laws and has a code of conduct.
So I think we're pretty close to out of time. I think we can probably take just one more question. Thanks, everybody. I know these are extended answers, but they're complicated issues. Is there a final question that anybody would like? I see one there. This gentleman here.
Hi, I'm Arthur Holland-Mishan, the Center for the Study of the Drone. Thank you very much, Faisal, for coming and sharing your story. I'm wondering whether you have any specific changes in US policy that you would like to see beyond just an acknowledgement and an apology of this specific strike in terms of its policies with regards to the use of drones in Yemen.
بالإضافة يعني إنه عم بسألك في أي تغييرات بالنسبة لمسار الحكومة الأمريكية بالإشي اللي عم بتسويه يعني البوليسيز تاعونها بالإضافة لأنك أنت عم بتطالب بإنه الاعتذار الرسمي. يعني شو ممكن تحكي لنا تشارك معهم إنه الولايات المتحدة لازم تغير منهاجها؟ شو الشغلات المعينة اللي أنت في رأيك ممكن؟
هو أول إنه حكاية أنا مقتنع قناعة كافية إنك تكافح الإرهاب أو القاعدة أو داعش أو أي كان أي جماعات إرهابية من السماء بالطائرات فوسيلة فاشلة أعتقدنا.
First thing is no drones. And I'm kind of saying that as a conclusion to what he said. He has the conviction that there is no kind of war against terrorism that is successful or effective that can be fought from the air.
بل على العكس هي أداة فعلا لتفريغ زيادة أو لزيادة حجم الناس هذه.
It's actually the opposite. It actually contributes to terrorism, that exact policy.
إذن لابد من العمل على محاور كثيرة. يعني ممكن نحن في المحور الديني ذاته إذا هو بيستغلوا الدين في هذا الموضوع في المحور الديني ممكن يكون في عمل كبير في الجانب هذا بس هذه البرامج تحتاج دعم فعلا.
So, I mean, if Al-Qaeda, whoever is using religion as a vehicle for these things, there are programs that could be used within the context of that same language, that same kind of religion to reach people.
نعم. وإذا كان هناك في ضرورة
But it requires a lot of money. I'm sorry. But it requires, you know.
وإذا هناك في ضرورة هي قصوى لاستخدام القوة في إقناع في ثانية البعد عن قتل الناس فلا بد أن تكون على الأرض.
And in extreme situations where one would consider it's justified to need to kill someone, then that needs to happen on the ground.
All right, I think that we've probably come to up here, but we don't have any more time for questions. Again, thanks to all of you for being here. Thank you to the Whitney, to Anne, to Laura and the team at Astro Noise. We're Reprieve. We're lawyers, we're investigators. We investigate, we litigate. We try to educate the public about the effects of the war on terror. You can find out more about us and our work at reprieve.org. Thanks to all of you for taking the time to spend your Sunday evening with us, and I hope you'll continue to read about these issues, to engage with these issues, and to talk to people about these issues. It's really very important. Thanks very much.